This rice every member of the family, down to the youngest child, must partake. After this ceremony everyone is free to get in his rice. Amongst the Burghers or Badagas, a tribe of the Nilgiri hills in southern India, the first handful of seed is sown and the first sheaf reaped by a Kurambar, a man of a different tribe, and members of which the Burghers regard as sorcerers. The grain contained in the first sheaf "is that day reduced to meal, made into cakes, and, being offered as a first fruit oblation is, together with the remainder of the sacrificed animal, partaken of by the Burgher and the whole of his family, as the meat of a federal offering and sacrifice." Among the Hindus of southern India, the eating of the new rice is the occasion of a family festival called Pongal. The new rice is boiled in a new pot on a fire which is kindled at noon on the day when, according to Hindu astrologers, the sun enters the Tropic of Capricorn. The boiling of the pot is watched with great anxiety by the whole family, for as the milk boils, so will the coming year be. If the milk boils rapidly, the year will be prosperous, but it will be the reverse if the milk boils slowly. Some of the new boiled rice is offered to the image of Ganesa, then everyone partakes of it. In some parts of northern India, the festival of the new crop is known as Nevan, that is, new grain. When the crop is ripe, the owner takes the omens, goes to the field, plucks 5 or 6 ears of barley in the spring crop and one of the millets in the autumn harvest. This is brought home, parched, and mixed with coarse sugar, butter, and curds. Some of it is thrown on the fire in the name of the village gods and deceased ancestors. The rest is eaten by the family. The ceremony of eating the new yams at Onitsha on the Niger is thus described. Quote, "Each headman brought out 6 yams, and cut down young branches of palm leaves and placed them before his gate, roasted 3 of the yams, and got some kola nuts and fish. After the yam is roasted, the Libya, or country doctor, takes the yam, scrapes it into a sort of meal, and divides it into halves. He then takes one piece and places it on the lips of the person who is going to eat the new yam. The eater then blows up the steam from the hot yam and afterwards pokes the hole into his mouth and says, 'I thank God for being permitted to eat the new yam.' He then begins to chew it heartily, with fish likewise." Among the Nandi of British East Africa, when the Eulycine grain is ripening in autumn, every woman who owns a cornfield goes out into it with her daughters, and they all pluck some of the ripe grain. Each of the women then fixes one grain in her necklace and chews another, which she rubs on her forehead, throat, and breast. No mark of joy escapes them. Sorrowfully they cut a basketful of the new corn, and carrying it home, place it in the loft to dry. As the ceiling is of wickerwork, a good deal of the grain drops through the crevasses and falls into the fire, where it explodes with a crackling noise. The people make no attempt to prevent this waste, for they regard the crackling of the grain in the fire as a sign that the souls of the dead are partaking of it. A few days later, porridge is made from the new grain and is served up with milk at the evening meal. All the members of the family take some of the porridge and dab it on the walls and roofs of the huts. Also, they put a little in their mouths and spit it out towards the east and on the outside of the huts. Then, holding up some of the grain in his hand, the head of the family prays to God for health and strength, and likewise for milk, and everybody present repeats the words of the prayer after him. Among the Kafres of Natal and Zululand, no one may eat of the new fruits till after a festival which marks the beginning of the Kafre year and falls at the end of December or the beginning of January. All the people assemble at the king's kraal, where they feast and dance. Before they separate, the dedication of the people takes place. Various fruits of the earth, as corn, mealies, and pumpkins, mixed with the flesh of a sacrificed animal and with medicine, are boiled in great pots, and a little of this food is placed in each man's mouth by the king himself. After thus partaking of the sanctified fruits, a man is himself sanctified for the whole year, and may immediately get in his crops. It is believed that if any man were to partake of the new fruits before the festival, he would die. If he were detected, he would be put to death, or at least all his cattle would be taken from him. The holiness of the new fruits is well marked by the rule that they must be cooked in a special pot which is used only for this purpose, and on a new fire kindled by a magician through the friction of two sticks which are called husband and wife. Among the Bechuanas it is a rule that before they partake of the new crops they must purify themselves. The purification takes place at the commencement of the new year on a day in January which is fixed by the chief. It begins in the great kraal of the tribe, where all the adult males assemble. Each of them takes in his hand leaves of a gourd, called by the natives letrotse, described as something between a pumpkin and a vegetable marrow, and having crushed the leaves, he anoints with the expressed juice his big toes and his navel. Many people indeed apply the juice to all the joints of their body, but the better informed say that this is a vulgar departure from ancient custom. After this ceremony in the great kraal, every man goes home to his own kraal, assembles all the members of his family, men, women, and children, and smears them all with the juice of the letrotse leaves. Some of the leaves are also pounded, mixed with milk in a large wooden dish, and given to the dogs to lap up. Then the porridge plate of each member of the family is rubbed with the letrotse leaves. When this purification has been completed, but not before, the people are free to eat of the new crops. The Bororo Indians of Brazil think it would be certain death to eat the new maize before it has been blessed by the medicine man. The ceremony of blessing it is as follows. The half-ripe husk is washed and placed before the medicine man, who, by dancing and singing for several hours and by incessant smoking, works himself up into a state of ecstasy, whereupon he bites into the husk, trembling in every limb and uttering shrieks from time to time. A similar ceremony is performed whenever a large animal or a large fish is killed. The Bororo are firmly persuaded that were any man to touch unconsecrated maize or meat before the ceremony had been completed, he and his whole tribe would perish. Amongst the Creek Indians of North America, the busk, or Festival of First Fruits, was the chief ceremony of the year. It was held in July or August when the corn was ripe, and marked the end of the old year and the beginning of the new one. Before it took place, none of the Indians would eat or even handle any part of the new harvest. Sometimes each town had its own busk, sometimes several towns united to hold one in common. Before celebrating the busk, the people provided themselves with new clothes and new household utensils and furnitures. They collected their old clothes and rubbish, together with all the remaining grain and their old provisions, cast them together in one common heap, and consumed them with fire. As a preparation for the ceremony, all the fires in the village were extinguished, and the ashes swept clean away. In particular, the hearth or altar of the temple was dug up and the ashes carried out. Then the chief priest put some roots of the button snake plant, with some green tobacco leaves and a little of the new fruits, at the bottom of the fireplace, which he afterwards commanded to be covered up with white clay and wetted over with clean water. A thick arbour of green branches of young trees was then made over the altar. Meanwhile, the women at home were cleaning out their houses, renewing the old hearths, and scouring all the cooking vessels that they might be ready to receive the new fire and the new fruits. The public or sacred square was carefully swept of even the smallest crumbs of previous feasts, "for fear of polluting the first fruit offerings." Also, every vessel that had contained or had been used about any food during the expiring year was removed from the temple before sunset. Then all the men who were not known to have violated the law of the first fruit offering and that of marriage during the year were summoned by a crier to enter the holy square and observe a solemn fast. But the women, except 6 old ones, the children, and all who had not attained the rank of warriors, were forbidden to enter the square. Sentinels were also posted at the corners of the square to keep out all persons deemed impure and all animals. A strict fast was then observed for 2 nights and a day, the devotees drinking a bitter concoction of button snake root